Okay, we've got 47 participants and still rising. Wayne, are you still unmuted and ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll go ahead and kick it off then. I'll just do a presenter roll check. Scott Malaker, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Chris Gould?
Right here.
And Craig Kroom, were you able to get on yet?
I'm at least on the phone, still working on the computer.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, if you're on the phone, then we can manage with the rest of it. So, all right, we've got everybody. I'll go ahead and kick us off. Welcome to the webinar being presented by 910 Drones. My name is Mike Chapman. I'm here filling in as a host today for Paul Rossi with 910 Drones. Paul was at the last moment unable to be with us. This is a rescheduled event from September. And he was unable to be here. He is, regretfully absent. And so I'll fill in for him today as your host. We've got Wayne Baker with DJI. Wayne is a 26-year fire service veteran, 10 years as a chief in Texas, and instrumental in founding the Texas, forgive me, Wayne, I don't have the title here pulled up, or bear with me.
North Texas Public Safety UAS response team.
Thank you. I want to make sure I didn't butcher the title there. So, instrumental in drones, and also the public safety liaison with DJI at this point. So, welcome, Wayne. Scott Malaker is assistant chief with the Willoughby Fire Department and Lake County HazMat in Ohio. Very long career in the fire service as well as HazMat, and certainly with drones. Both well respected in the drone community, as well as Chris Gould. Chris is here with us with Southern Manatee Fire Rescue. Rich Gitanis is his direct counterpart. Rich regretfully could not be with us today, both of which are renowned in hazmat, work with DJI significantly. And if you see something online about drones and hazmat, chances are it is either from Southern Manatee Fire Rescue or has their fingerprints on it in some way. So we really appreciate you guys being here. And then finally, Craig Kroom. Craig is with FLIR Systems, and Craig is our service and training manager for the detection team. And so he's going to talk to us about technology available and out in the future towards the end of this webinar. And again, I'm Mike Chapman with FLIR. I basically responsible for public safety sales for major metropolitan fire and law enforcement entities across the country and in the Americas as a whole. So my background is fire and hazmat for 24 years. And so I'm thrilled to be here with you in Paul's stead today. So we'll go ahead and kick us off in that, drones and hazmat are one of those things that your mind is the limit in terms of what they can be used for. And so your creativity is your only limit in many regards. So we want to make sure that everybody understands you've got a tool in the toolbox. If you don't have one yourself, you can get access to a drone in many cases these days. And so network with your peers, network with those around you, find out who has drones, who doesn't. You may have a drone, but not the right drone for a given task. And some of these experts that we've got online with us today are going to talk not only about ways to use the drones, but which drones are better for which types of tasks, and how it can make it safer for you in hazmat response. And I think that's the key. We're talking about safety here. So whether it's a motor vehicle collision, a hazmat incident on the highway, a fixed facility hazmat incident or explosion, or a potential for an explosion, or a train derailment, any of these and many, many more are situations where now we've got eyes in the sky with immediate streaming capability to remote locations like a command post or even an emergency operations center miles and miles away, potentially across the country. You're able to live stream what the drone is seeing without putting a person in harm's way. And so if we're able to do that, not only can we make more efficient our hazmat operations and reduce our action times, for recon downrange, but also protect our people and make sure that we're not putting somebody in harm's way without cause. So without further ado, Wayne, I'll ask you to kick us off.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being here, especially with such a great panel that is far more knowledgeable than me on hazmat. I will admit that in my career, this was not one area that I really delved deeply into, but when it came to drones, it was an area that for me was something I really wanted to see us get into. I knew that this technology uh, could be a game changer in hazmat environment. And for me, what I do and why I got into drones is throughout my career, firefighter safety and health was a big focus. And so that's part of why I ended up utilizing drone technology. Because for me, and I say this all the time, and I really mean it, it is about saving police officer and firefighter lives to the extent, Chris mentioned a minute ago, as we were getting prepped, anytime I can send a robot instead of a human, I feel like I've saved a life right then and there. So this is all very important. And so, as I always do, I really have to give a lot of credit to Chris and Scott and others that have done such great work with hazmat and drones. Um, so, just from a command perspective on the use of drones, we already know in search and rescue, fires, incident mapping, over the last several years, the drones have proven their worth. And now hazmat has shown the tremendous benefits, again, as I just mentioned, not putting a firefighter downrange in harm's way, or making the process more efficient. And as I'll kind of mention, getting that actionable data is the goal of the use of drones. Getting it in shorter periods of time before we're committing personnel is extremely important. On structure fires, I talk about getting that thermal view and knowing the roof integrity before I put a crew into or on that roof has been tremendous benefit of the use of drones. So now with hazmat, having that advanced knowledge of the environment that we have and what is going on really is making it more efficient, and again, saving lives, which ultimately is saving civilian lives and improving their safety. So that's another true great benefit. So again, personnel safety is paramount with me. We're getting that initial incident product identification. We're finding out if we have a leak or a spill sooner. Again, all before we're committing any crews into the hot zone. And you're seeing with, the MSX blending technology in the pictures below, we're even getting to see product level in the tank, as well as placarding and tank rail car identification. And this is just scratching the surface of what you're able to get. And Chris can speak more to this because this is really their area of work that I'm utilizing here. But proving to get that air sampling information again before personnel is committed into that environment is fantastic. And there's several different ways you can do that, as you can see from the strips to attaching the multi-gas detector and slaving a camera to it, to new detectors that are going to be able to transmit by themselves or through the drone itself, or even a drone mounted multi-gas detector are proving invaluable again as part of the drone ecosystem. And then I think Scott's going to touch on this a little bit more, which is great, is the smoke plume tracking and modeling. Now we're getting that information immediately. For me, it was on a structure fire one day that I didn't know it was in this building, but I knew I had a heavy column of smoke coming out. And, we were already utilizing the drone and it was very early on. But I just on a whim thought, I wonder where the smoke is going and what I have downrange. And to be able to, yaw the aircraft and camera around and immediately see where that smoke was traveling. If it was something I needed to make evacuation or shelter in place decisions, I would be able to make it immediately, rather than wait on computer modeling or, our best guesses as educated guesses as we have in the past. And then another thing is we've seen drones be used as personnel tracking. for the, I used it again on structure fires, but now it's really able to be utilized even more on a hazmat for personnel accountability, for, tracking crews, monitoring their progress, as well as monitoring, how they're handling the situation physically. And if they're in distress, we would know maybe sooner than a radio call out might come from them. On structure fires, I would have my safety officer and accountability officer right there, being able to have that live view, as you see on the left in the back of this Tahoe. And this can be stepped back away by personnel that are in the cold zone. You can also deliver tools into that hot zone if there's extra tools they need. And this is another great, again, ability to reduce time to get those tools, number one. And number two, that's not another person I've had to add to that hot zone. So we're committing fewer personnel. And then along those lines, though, it is extremely important to remember that you're probably going to need an alternate landing area, probably in the warm zone, with someone in appropriate PPE to be able to monitor batteries, swap batteries, hand those tools off, things like that, and then go through a decon process with that aircraft afterwards. You can do a thorough decon on the aircraft, as you can see in the bottom right. This was with Southern Manatee Fire Rescue that was able to test that out among other things that they tested. And so, while your pilot can be back in the cold zone, as we see here on the bottom left, we can, have that forward personnel that's not as endangered, not having to go into the hot zone, but can still be an aircraft maintainer as a go-between. And then the uses are growing. We've seen recently, unfortunately, with climate change, a lot of wildfires, and unfortunately, in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant zone of alienation, there was a large wildfire over this past few months that drones not only helped in directing firefighting operations, but they were able to help in radiation monitoring in this area, and as well with the smoke modeling and where that smoke was carrying some of that radiation from this area. So, I think someone said a minute ago that the sky's the limit. It's only whatever you can dream up, these drones will be able to. And I've heard just in the last couple of days, new uses. In fact, Scott's going to touch on one of those here in just a few minutes. So I really appreciate, again, my opportunity to be able to present some of this information. And again, it's all about saving lives for me. We've proven that in emergency response. And these are also just an invaluable tool for us. And I can't wait to see the next idea that comes out that is, again, going to save lives and protect property. So thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this.
Thank you, Wayne. We appreciate you being here. And with that, we're not going to take any questions until the end. So I'll go ahead and queue up Chris Gould. As I said, Chris is here representing both him and Rich Katanis for Southern Manatee Fire Rescue. So Chris, floor is yours.
Chris, we need your audio.
And in conclusion, no, I was saying what a class act, we have with Wayne Baker and Scott here. What an honor it is to be with these guys, with Mike and FLIR and everything. It's kind of fun to be at the cutting edge, being able to help participate and throw some of our lessons learned into the mix, and draw from all the experiences from all these talented teams that are out there. So But it's great to be here. Let's kick it off. Got a little video here to kind of just wake everybody up and show a little kind of some of the things that we have been doing over at Southern Manatee. So with no further ado, Mike. Yeah, the trick is talking the chief into letting us blow up the drone that we just bought. Hey, just kind of to let you guys know, my name is Chris Gould. I'm battalion chief with Southern Manatee Fire Rescue. I've been in the service since 1990. I've been a hazardous materials technician and active team member since 1995. I'm currently the hazardous materials coordinator, team leader for Manatee County's HazMat team. We're also a regional response team in addition to that. We're just kind of give you a heads up on geography. We're located just on the south end of Tampa Bay down here in Florida. The other guy sitting next to me here in the frame is Rich Katanis. He's our UAS coordinator and another one of the founding fathers of our program. Between the collaboration between him and our other team members, we've been able to put together the capabilities to reduce responder risk going into hazardous materials. Like we slide into this next slide, I can show you kind of some of the things we've been doing. We can skip over this one too. We basically went out and just, we had missions that need to be accomplished on hazardous material scenes. We're in Florida. Heat is a big deal for our guys in hazmat suits. And it's probably one of the more dangerous things, even when you consider the hazardous materials themselves. So the thought was to reduce cost, reduce responder risk by using machines rather than people to get our initial recon information done. And we started off utilizing the drone. We go to the next slide as a eye in the sky. And then as we started using them on scenes and we started coming back and doing our PIAs, our post-incident analysis, we started realizing that we could push these to the limit a little bit further with just a little bit of testing and finding out the capabilities. First, we were just using them to kind of see what was going on around the scene, scan for information such as placards and signage and things like that. And then we were able to figure out that with some testing, we could determine that effectively the drones we were using, the I-1, the Mavic, and the M210, were relatively intrinsically safe. I'm cautious about saying that. All I can tell you is that we can't say that something's intrinsically safe, but I can tell you that we have taken all three of those drones, put them in boxes filled with propane, mixed them with the right amount of air to put them right in the middle of the explosive limits, and flown them, and they have not exploded. And as you saw in the videos, being firemen, we went ahead and blew them up anyway, just because it's fun to do, and to prove our that the atmosphere we were testing in was truly a flammable atmosphere. With that, if we want to move on to the next slide, what we ended up doing is hanging a bunch of different sensors underneath the detectors, underneath the drones. And to view them, we ended up just swinging the camera around on a gimbal and monitoring the readings from the ground, from a safe area in the cold zone, and letting the drone do all the work that a human being would have done going into the hot zone. The nice thing about this is that the drone goes into the air and has basically it's unlimited life cycles going through there. It's a work cycle as many batteries as you can pump into it, whereas with personnel, we have 30 minutes of setup time, 45 minutes worth of setup time. And then once we put someone in, usually they don't go back in because they're exhausted due to heat frustration, and the suit, if it's contaminated, usually comes out of service. And that's that can be anywhere from $5,000 an entry if you count up all the suits and everything we use. What we have here is just kind of showing the, if we can go back down that slide, some of the things that we can do. One, radiation is an easy one to do. That's a gimme. We tested it with live samples, and the drones, it does not affect them. The test papers, if you guys are using a commercial available one, that's fine. pH papers with a piece of damp sponge stapled to them will not dry out underneath the rotor wash. That's the trick, is you can't just send pH paper in there. You need it to be wet and with a piece of sponge stapled to it so the rotors don't dry it out. And many other test papers you can put in there, M8 for chemical weapons, that kind of stuff, fluorine, water paper, you pick it, you can use it. The cameras are awesome. The technology that's out there nowadays allows the drone to sit back and stay out of the plume and out of the contaminants. Then we have the thermal imaging, which has been a great camera for us because we've been able to go into runaway reactions, stand back a mile down the road and see if the silo is increasing in temperature, which therefore is increasing in pressure. We can also tell how much product is left in the container, whether it's an LPG tank or whether it's another chemical reaction that's gone wild. And then we have our basic combustible gas meter, gas meter, which tells us our oxygen levels and whether the area is a flammable. So as we move into the next slide, one of our goals with metering was I only have two choices as a hazmat team leader in what kind of PPE I can put my personnel in. It's either flame proof or chemical proof, but there's very few outfits out there that do both well. So that was the first reason we wanted to put our drone into a flammable atmosphere, was to see if which suit the guys have to wear. And we do have some we also have some level A suits with some flame resistance to it, flash suits, but they're not flame resistant, but it helps with picking our PPE. So that's kind of why we did it. As for air monitoring, we don't use the air monitoring to get down into parts per million or anything. We use it more as a qualifying, not a quantifying analysis. And once we know that there is some kind of flammable chemical in the air, we assume that the closer you get to the leak, you will eventually hit the lower and upper explosive limits. You'll find that something that's flammable. So with just knowing that, we don't proceed any further, and we put our guys in fire resistant clothing. If we go in and we fly and we get a hit on the pH paper, which is very sensitive, by the way, that stuff activates as low as 7 parts per million. At least that's what we found with our ammonia testing. At that point in time, we'll turn around and our guys go in plastic. And we'll, and then proceed further with their regular meters just in case something changes. If we want to slide into the next one. The one thing that we do with our setup is that we fly, we put a TV set, and our entry crews get to watch all the same information that everybody else is getting as the pilot's flying over. So they actually get to see the incident. They can start gathering the tools they need to mitigate it, and they can kind of get a rough idea of what they're walking into right as they're getting dressed and they're standing by for their orders. So that's one nice thing about having that visual mounted right there, is that everybody can be on the same page mentally. They get the same mental picture of the incident, and then when we decide to come up with our game plan, all participants can kind of really visualize what is expected of them and what some of the hazards are. And a lot of times they will say, hey, did you guys see this? And we'll say no, and then we'll change the plan accordingly. What we have here, if you're looking at this, is this incident occurred about 6 weeks prior to the thing that happened in Beirut. We got called to an unknown fire up at by our port. What this was all of a sudden the ground was on fire. No one knew why it was on fire. The owner of the property was clearing some brush and was burning it off, and all of a sudden the dirt started burning. With that, we got dispatched to it, set up down the road, flew the drone in, got recon on it, and if you guys kind of flip over to the video, you can kind of get a visual of this little kind of, we call it a Florida volcano. And what it is this was an abandoned property, an abandoned dump site. And the owner did not know what was here. And what we ended up doing, if we can stop it kind of right now, we ended up flying the drone over it, checking it, ran some papers through it. We actually got a hit on pH papers for ammonia. Well, we found out later it was ammonia, but the pH papers hit, so we knew we had something that we thought was kind of a caustic burning. Once we figured out that it was not water reactive, we were able to send a ladder truck down with a single crew and extend the aerial stream and deluge and put out the fire. After the fact, after we got the testing and everything done, we found out that this was actually an ammonium nitrate fire. It was an abandoned pit that was left over from the 70s. The owner, nobody knew it was there, and we were lucky enough to find it. It was about a football field size in footprint. Depth, I heard estimates up to 30 feet deep. Don't hold me to that. But if anybody's familiar with ammonium nitrate, it's the same stuff that blew up in Beirut. So the end of this clip will kind of show that, how much power we're dealing with. This is one of those reasons why I think that any drone, whether it's a Mavic Dual, Enterprise, something with a thermal imager, and something you can take test papers to, is actually probably in the hands of, if it's in the hands of a good qualified hazmat technician, would benefit any department regardless of size. West Texas had an incident a while back that was tragic. We lost firefighters in that one because unfortunately they had no other option but to respond into the scene to assess the situation before that went bad. If we continue playing the video, you can kind of see what happened in Beirut. But yeah, imagine if the guys in West Texas could have just stood back like we did and fly over it, see what's happening, get an assessment, pull back their response, maybe come up with a better way, figure out what's the best access, where their water supplies are and all that before something like this happens. And ammonium nitrate is a very tricky product. So if we played our cards wrong, we could have been in this situation. Cool. We can move on to the next slide. And that was just one of ours. This is another one. The whole reason we got into drones was because of anhydrous ammonia. Where we're at, we have a lot of factories that take up a lot of geography. We're talking tens of acres. And this is one facility that was just a food warehouse for Winn-Dixie. It's one of our larger food distribution centers. And they had an ammonia leak. The neighbors were noticing it, but the first in teams couldn't really locate it because of the size of the building. We were able to bring the Mavic in, and if you want to hit the slide, next video. We're able to bring the Mavic in. The small guy, easy to set up, hit it with the thermal imager off of that. And due to the temperature differential between the compressed ammonia being released to the atmosphere, and you can kind of see it over here off to the left of the screen, right above that orange block. You can see some dark clouds. It's very faint, but you can see where there's some dark plumes coming off of that. And those are our team members walking away in their suits. But it was a very easy flyover. The guys flew over the roof. They saw the temperature differential. They said the leak is right here. They were able to get with the plant manager. They were already in the process of shutting down the king valve, but at least they knew where to start for getting the repairs done. And then we knew when it was stopped and when it stopped leaking. That was the other part. So once the system bled down and we were able to confirm that it was no longer leaking, then everybody could go back to normal while repairs are being carried on. This slide, just kind of a fun fact, new and creative ways when you're out flying is we're using the drone here as just a video feed. It's an RF radio feed. You don't need cell tower or anything like that. And the guys took it into a meth lab and we're just able to set it down and then feed a live feed back to the subject matter experts out in the truck. And as we all do, you have a limited amount of suits, you have a limited amount of air on a scene. You want to do things the right way the first time. So they were able to feed this back to the truck. The crew was able to say, hey, we need to get a sample of the product that's in this container, that container, and this container, and then we can figure out what we're dealing with from those 3 samples rather than hitting all the different things that were in there. I think I think I have a video on this. Let's see if that comes up. So just by simply being able to have someone outside with being able to just kind of come up with a collection plan, for lack of a better word, it saves a lot of time rather than just going in there and having the guys just grab sample after sample after sample and then just kind of figuring it out after the fact. Just the real time, having that information in real time is really nice. So we can move on to the next slide. And this was a fun one. A gasoline tanker. Bread and butter for all us hazmat teams. Everybody runs these. But the neat thing about this was being able to get the drone down range while the guys were kind of getting suited up and getting prepared. We were able to fly over this. And if you get and fly over it, and the guys were able to kind of see, okay, what kind of domes they're dealing with, so they knew which kind of clamps to take. They also could figure out that they had 2 domes that were leaking, so they knew that they were going to have to take two dome clamps downrange. They saw that the rear compartment was compromised, but not any of the others. But they're all kind of compromised in one of these because the baffles break. If you move on to the next onto the video. The other one too is that on this one we were lucky enough to where we had the driver, he was intact and everything, but if he wasn't, we would be able to fly over the side of the truck and read the carrier information off the side of the off the door of the truck. If you have no other means of knowing what's going on or who to contact for this. Here we go with this is what we're doing is we put the drone downwind of our foam blanket and we just left it there. And the nice thing is about the batteries last forever if you're just using the camera. They last for up to 2 hours on this particular model. And we left the drone downwind, and we're able just to monitor to see if we were catching any flammable, see if our foam blanket was starting to degrade, and then we just add more foam as needed. It was just a nice use of the tool. This particular one is something I'm really proud of. We had the opportunity to you guys ever seen Festus, Missouri, where they had their chlorine leak from a rail car? They had a similar situation where this cloud up in the top here simulates that incident they had where they had a rail car just with a bunch of chlorine being released. We were able to come in here and show that the drones can actually create a bubble of fresh air over a victim or over a team that's trying to repair a leak. That bubble of fresh air can help increase visibility to facilitate leak control efforts. As a bonus, we found out that, as we play this on this next video, you'll see in a few minutes, that we're able to control the plume. We're able to keep a bubble of fresh air confirmed by the air monitor readings on our foregas that that it's a clean bubble. So if you had someone you needed to evacuate out of a car, maybe, or create a path of fresh air to let people who a large number of people who can't be protected or aren't protected to move from one location to another, this may be an option. Kind of with that too, you can also use the drone with the thermal to locate a victim inside this cloud, maybe someone who's overcome with gas, and then provide a fresh bubble of air to kind of give them some relief until the rescuers can get there. As it hovers, it can also be used as a beacon and the rescuers with in their level A suits or whatever they're wearing can go directly to the victim from that location. So it was kind of a neat thing to be able to do. And you can also prioritize if you have a bunch of people who are knocked down under this cloud with the thermal imager and being able to, or even with using the downdraft, you're able to see who's kicking, who might be a viable victim, and prioritize them for a rescue over top of someone who may be DRT, dead right there. This is one of the newest drones we've had the luxury to play with. DJI has let us play with one of these. We got one, and we're still working out all the little details on it, kind of learning it. But it's got a pretty good unit. It's got I think a 45-minute battery on it, and it's a lot of fun to play with. Next slide. Yes, it's got the flight time. The waypoints are nice. And as you guys can see, the pilot perspective on this one's very good too. Let's see if we go on to the next one. The thermals. One nice thing we had about the thermals is we're running the H20T right now, and that's really good for us because if you can see right here in this slide, you can actually tell how much propane is left in this tank. It's almost giving us X-ray vision. We see that the camera technology is ever changing right now, and it's getting better and better by the month. So you just kind of have to lock in on what your needs are and see what your demands are from it. But yes, I'll move on.
So one thing, Chris, that I'll add in there, you got the H20T and the XT2 mentioned on the M300.
Yeah.
FLIR also just released a dual boson FLIR drone-based camera, which is called a TZ20, which is plug and play for the 200 series and the 300 series airframes. And it's basically a dual thermal payload. So it's got a wide field of view and a narrow field of view, all thermal payload. So it's still a different payload from the H20 and the XT2 with respect to the visual camera. It does not have a visual camera, but it is a dual thermal with multiple fields of view, allowing zoom capabilities now. So different perspective. And so again, another tool in the toolbox. And so there's no one single silver bullet in any of these things when it comes to drones or cameras, just knowing that there's another tool in the toolbox that was just released and it's going to be shipping soon. So just another thing to be aware of.
Yeah, and one thing too is I've noticed that all the manufacturers are doing the cameras are being used for many different industries, and there's a lot of Easter eggs in there for the hazmat people. Well, once you get into your softwares and you start playing with the palettes and the different things that are in there, a lot of times the industry is putting in capabilities that they didn't even know that would benefit hazmat. So getting in and having your guys actually get in and play with all the different settings and getting into the manuals and seeing what the capabilities are, you'll be surprised what comes free. There, you'll discover a lot of things that we can utilize that we never thought would be an option for us. So that's us. Thank you for letting me burn your ear off there. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. We wish Rich could have joined us as well, but we really appreciate you guys' expertise and willing to share all this with everybody. Moving forward, Scott Maleka, Assistant Chief with Willoughby Fire Department in Ohio and on the Lake County Hazmat team. We'll see if we can turn it over to you, Scott.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, I get to play a color commentator or cleanup, I think. But all the points that were made by Chief Baker and Chief Gould are great points. Our team here in Lake County, UAS unit, I should say, started out of hazmat. And naively, I know now, my thought was we would just pick up, back then it was just a Phantom Vision, and we'd throw that on the truck and we could fly it down and I'd be able to read placards and it would just be great. Just a thermal, no thermal at that point, an optical camera. Much to my surprise, actually setting up and running an unmanned aircraft unit required far more. There's this crazy thing called the FAA. They take issue with just being able to fly around without being licensed or certified. But so our humble beginnings actually came out of the primary use of hazmat and then burgeoned into what it is now. Next slide. So just a quick overview. We started back in about 2014. We went into service in 15, but we have a multidisciplinary team. So we actually have fire and police. This works really well within our county, mainly because the number of people that you need to effectively operate a UAS unit, if you solely relied upon fire department personnel and having good qualified pilots that are available 24/7 would be a much greater burden. So our agency is actually made up of police and fire. And the beauty of this is you know, when there's a police incident, typically we're standing around on the fringe with an ambulance waiting for someone to get hurt. And then inversely, when there's a chemical spill or an accident, typically the law enforcement officers are establishing a perimeter, but they're in a perfect position where we complement each other in that mission. So right now we have 25 remote pilots. We have this aircraft staged in different areas of the county, and it actually serves police, fire, obviously all special teams, including hazmat, SWAT, and the bomb unit, as well as EMA. Next slide. I'm going to touch on this really quickly because this is kind of where the cleanup part comes in, but the payload delivery systems and capability, and honestly, the guys, go ahead and pause that video. There we go. Obviously, the beauty of this is when you network with a lot of other agencies, which we do a lot through social media, Rick Atanis, Wayne, all of these guys that are on this call with us today, my goodness, the stuff they share. And out of Southern Manatee, the use of the payload kits, the use of mounting a meter on it, and using the camera to view that, all came out of all of those people innovating in all these different areas. So the payload attachments on any of the aircraft come in real handy, as has already been shown with the mounting of the monitors on it, pH paper, and those types of things. Let's go ahead and move on.
Do you want to play the rest of that video, Scott?
No, that's okay, because he kind of covered the payload capabilities and strapping meters and all other tools under that for us. Mounting and light systems. The mounting systems we covered. The only thing I'll also mention along with that is scene lighting. So let's face it, things never happen as I look out here in beautiful Ohio on a nice fall day, right? It happens at night. So with the addition of lighting on it, in addition to your thermal, areas where maybe you have runoff, you need to control and contain, you're trying to identify where runoff went. Utilizing the scene lighting on a drone is a great way to be able to survey large areas, especially if you have topographical data that we'll get into when we talk about mapping. And with the thermal cameras, great at night for navigating, but it's not necessarily going to see a sheen on a water or whatever happens to be going on. So the combination of the thermal camera along with the lighting package on the aircraft, as you can see, the M210, the M300, guys get creative. So these are simply just two Streamway TLA-HPLs mounted on that 210. You could do the same thing on a 300. The Mavic Enterprise is graced with a surprisingly effective set of spotlights on it that also work really, really well. So when you're looking at the areas that a leak might be impacting, utilizing these attachments, especially lighting systems, comes in real handy. Go ahead and move on. Command post streaming. We talked a little bit about streaming. Mike had mentioned it, or I'm sorry, Wayne had mentioned it during his presentation. But I can tell you in the past year, especially since part of our details have been monitoring protests, apparently it's a year of protests, but being able to stream our data back, whether it's a hazmat incident or whatever it happens to be, to a remote stakeholder, command post, has been invaluable. And in addition to that, as far as marketing your team and showing usefulness, a lot of agencies may know that you have UAS capabilities, but they don't fully appreciate it. But in a command center, when they're sitting in a safe location that could be miles away, and they have multiple streams from multiple aircraft showing them not only the incident scene, the travel, they can see if you're using a meter on a rig, they can see the readings on that meter for airborne is invaluable. And there's a few different ways to do that. There's a lot of vendors, most of them work through 4G technology. We do it locally where we have a screen on scene similar to the screen on the back of the Tahoe, and then remotely, and there's a lot of different vendors that can provide that, different packages for different fits. Some of them are hardware based, where you just need an HDMI connection and they push it out. Some are software based. Our team uses DroneSense, but by no means are they the only one. But there's a solution there, but it's definitely becoming a very integral part of managing any emergency incident, and certainly a hazmat incident, because you're not usually talking about just one small area. You're talking about an event like Chief Gould had shown you that covers a very wide area, and you can see the impact on the downwind side in areas that maybe are areas of concern. And the people in your operations center that are looking at protecting in place or evacuating have a much clearer picture. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Okay, go ahead and move on. AR at fire scenes. So I'll show a video here in a second, but we covered a lot of the hardware, but the most interesting part of this is because you have such a great ecosystem with aircraft that are out there, certainly DJI is a big part of that, is the software that they're pushing out now. And I see one of the greatest areas of innovation that's occurring is now we have these solid hardware platforms, right? I want to fly longer. There's things I want to do, of course. I wish the batteries lasted longer, and that'll come. But the software developers and the addition of augmented reality, AR, and artificial intelligence, AI, for public safety is going to be really integral. AR, basically augmented reality, gives you the ability to overlay existing GIS data that you have, whether that's pre-plans, whether that's GIS data that your county has. That could be sewer lines that run through your jurisdiction, water lines, power lines, critical infrastructure, whatever it happens to be, it overlays it on top of your drone's image. So the pilot has very, very good situational awareness. And again, that information is being streamed out. So go ahead and play this video. It's going to cover a lot of things, but it'll give you some idea. There we go. Cue dramatic music. So EduBees is just one. Actually, EduBees has actually moved into more of the government side of things. They started developing that platform really for public safety when they started. It gives you an example, and this goes back a few years, of the power that having that augmented reality, that overlay with your existing counties or jurisdictions GIS data as you're doing an assessment of the scene, assessment of air plumes and modeling, so you know where things are going, what hazards are in the way in real time. Because when you're in the air, you may or may not be situated to exactly everything that's around, but all that data feeds back. And AI is the same way. Artificial intelligence gives you the same thing. It can pick up on things that maybe the human eye can't pick up on. So as these sensors get better, and the AR and the eye get better, it's going to be a really, really tremendous tool for managing a hazmat incident or really any type of incident. The next thing I'll talk about, which kind of leads into the point I was going to make, that some playing around we've done, is mission planning. So you have mission planning software that is really, really effective and allows you to fly the drone autonomously over an area using your optical or thermal sensors. By doing this mission planning, if you have a large area, and this is for long-term and short-term planning, you can map an area looking at all of the topography that's there, and that data can be all made into highly detailed maps. You saw this done in the Cape fires out in California. There was some very good video put out on that topic. And the same thing applies really to any emergency, and certainly to hazmat when you're looking at runoff control and containment and looking at these efforts, especially long-term types things like train derailments. That, my friends, is not a couple hours in and out. That is a multi-day adventure. And having updated mapping that shows you in real time, not the Google map stuff, but real time, where your booms are at, how effective they're doing, is great to have. Go to the next slide. There we go. So incident mapping. So what we've started playing around with is using incident mapping. And I think everybody has heard of drone deploy and those types of mapping things, Pix4D, and they're great tools for mapping if you're talking about long-term planning, because it takes time to fly those flights, use Mission Planner, collect the data that you want, and then upload that data and create detailed maps. But a new generation of these mapping programs has come into play. And with that, the ability to rapidly process that data and be able to feed that data back to a command center and use it for managing the incident. There's two types of incident mapping. One's photogrammetry, the other one's videogrammetry. They both basically use the drone as a platform where you're collecting images or video, right? Photogrammetry or videogrammetry, and then putting it into a usable type map to be able to assess the severity of the leak, where it's going, and more importantly, it can show you topography. So if you're curious where something's going to run or where it's going to go, being able to use that mapping for topography is really, really beneficial. The two that I'm most familiar with and that we played around with is Skybrowse, which uses videogrammetry, and Pix4D React, which both of those, the key to them is not that there's anything wrong with other software, but it's how quickly you can process that data and get it back to the command center. So there's an example below. This is Skybrowse, and Skybrowse allows me a 3D image. So this particular image here, model, was we had a tractor trailer that went off the freeway, careened down a hill and embedded itself into a bank, and there was a stream down below. So as part of this, and fortunately in this incident, we did lose both of the diesel tanks, so we did have a diesel fuel spill, which obviously was getting into the creek. Thankfully, the tractor trailer was ironically enough carrying not livestock, was carrying trees. So I guess the trees wanted to go back where they wanted to be in the woods there, but so all those came off the vehicle. But imagine this is a 306 or a 312, and now you have a completely different incident. So you can see, and I can't manipulate it, but we flew over this, and this was just a test we did. And you can see the route it took off the freeway, and you can see it somewhat go down the bank. But as he manipulates that around, you can see there's a grade to that. Also, there's a stream down there. So with one simple flight, we literally put the aircraft up, it autonomously flew 2 circles around the scene, and then we dumped it up through a 4G connection up to the cloud. In about 15 minutes, we had this map. And this map will allow us not only to analyze from all 3 sides, topography, the topography of the area, the slope, the stream, and obviously see any spill or runoff that's there, but we can also annotate, which is hard to get into today, but we can annotate at the top or drag a bar and measure. So literally, if I'm doing, in this case, a traffic accident reconstruction, I can drop a pin, drop it down, and I'll get a measurement. If I want to know how far the slope is that comes down, if I rotate that image around and change my angle and put a pin at the top and pin at the bottom, it'll tell me there's a 12-foot drop. And I can do that elevation as I go down. And they've added additional tools that I don't have set up here right now that will, on top of that, plot on top of that a topography map. So it'll show me for all the areas I flew, which way the grade runs. So I'll be able to tell if it's a spill or leak. Maybe I have access, maybe I don't. This particular one, no problem, right? Trees. But if it's something I need to be back from, or I need to let that vehicle do what it's going to do because I can't get close to it, but I need to control and contain down range, or I have fire streams flowing and I have runoff occurring and I want to track where that goes. It's a really, really effective tool using this type of mapping to assist you in managing the incident and managing a hazmat incident, especially with the topography data. The topography stuff now, as you guys know, maybe I could bring somebody in, or I could pick up GIS maps and figure out where everything's going to run. I could pick up sewer maps or storm water maps, stuff from UCGS to find out where it's going to run. But now I actually have a live image with the vehicle there, and I can see where product flow is going and what it's doing. So it's a real effective tool. Both of them are nice packages. They all offer a little different, but consider that. If you haven't played with that, consider taking a look at that. It's very, very good for hazmat incidents and obviously a lot of other uses. Next slide. Plume tracking. So we kind of got this, and that anhydrous one that Chief Gold showed was a great example. I'm trying to remember what incident this was, but obviously this one was a chemical that was heavier than air, right? So I saw a question earlier. They were talking about the use of the we get this a lot. The use of using a 4-gas meter on a drone, and you always hear, well, how long should the tubing be, or is the prop wash going to wash it out, or what good does that do? And here's the point. First off, it's not used like I would if I was trying to get specific readings. I'm trying to determine the presence of. So typically, let's just say and then the other half of this whole thing is, what are the chemical properties? You always got to ask yourself that. Is it lighter than air? Is it heavier than air? What's the vapor density? In this particular instance, you'll see this product clearly is heavier than air. So me flying around at altitude, say I'm at 120 AGL, I'm not really even looking to detect this. At this point, I'm monitoring where it's going, right? It's going to sink to lower areas. Inversely, if I have a product that's lighter than air, then maybe I can turn around and using the drone, be able to detect the presence of, and I'm using my modeling programs, right? So I'm in Aloha. We'll just use the simple one, the Aloha, but there's other tools. And if I run a plot and the plot tells me that it's going in this direction, this far downwind, with the drone, I have the ability to validate if that data is accurate and to continue to track that. The other thing you got to remember is we have area arrays. And if you're not familiar with area arrays sit on the ground. And area arrays are great for a product that's heavier than air. Area arrays are meters that can be mounted at a perimeter, and they feed that data back, and that's great. But typically we'll hang those on a fence. If the product's lighter than air, I don't know that an area array is going to help me. And if it's heavier than air, then an area array will. But I can use that data, the drone, to quantify if the data that I'm getting from all the other metering and monitoring I have going on is accurate, and I can track movement with that. Go ahead and click on one of the two links because they're both going to kind of show you the same. Okay. This is an example. This is actually a gas leak. I believe it's in California, but this is a large natural gas pipeline. As you can see, it's using a thermal view of this large gas leak and covering an area. And again, just a real good example of how a drone, and especially a drone with thermal capability, can actually see what the eye would not see. Because if we were in the optical mode, I believe the other link shows you both. If we're in the optical mode, I don't know that I see that whole gas cloud in that plume, but having the capability of having a dual style camera where I have an optical camera and I have a visual camera allows me to see things I wouldn't normally be able to see. And again, track the plume. I pull up my hazmat modeling tools. It tells me it's traveling in this direction. It's going to be this far. And if I can verify what I'm getting on the software side via using the drone for recon, that's a win. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, I gotta get out of that. fire response. The last thing I have here, because I know we're pushing up on a little over an hour, is another incident that we had. And again, it was one of the first uses we had with the drone, but in regards to hazmat, this was an industrial fire that occurred. We had drums that were shooting off. Crews went in initially. They had to pull back because the 55-gallon drums were levying. So they pulled back to a defensive position. We arrived on scene. This is a large industrial facility that makes some really nasty stuff. And they were concerned was that the fire would travel to the other part of the building that had items in it that were far more hazardous. And if they managed to breach the firewall, which you'll see here in a second with the thermal, that they would have to evacuate a large area. So our primary role at this point, because they really couldn't get people in there, they had to hang back, was to do recon, which we did. Now we flew, this goes back at just the Inspire one with the camera on it, and then we switched and threw the XT on it. But the key with this was it allowed us to do two things. A, monitor the fire progress. B, ensure that the firewall that you'll see here on the thermal is not breached, because if it started moving the other side of the building, we had aerial streams that were in play. It validated whether or not the aerial streams were not being effective in holding that fire at bay. We did not have to put any first responders in harm's way because we had already pulled back. So again, the safety of our personnel being paramount. And then of course, like any large industrial fire, what's adjacent to this? The Grand River. So you'll see when it pulls back, right next to this is a large navigable waterway. Well, actually where this is, it isn't navigable, but it dumps into beautiful Lake Erie. So we had runoff from the fire and runoff from fire operations that was getting into the river. So in addition to providing recon data on the hazmat side for the advancement of the fire and with whether it was or was not going to get into an area of the building where we needed to evacuate, we also were able to monitor runoff on the river and allowed hazmat teams to get downstream and deploy booms on the water to contain it so that later on the good old EPA could come in or the cleanup company could come in and clean it up. And you'll see us switch to thermal view here. But more importantly, when you pan up, you'll see that firewall. And that was really what we were able to monitor is the fire getting into the other part of the building? Are we going to contain it? You can see the entire area is collapsed here around where it started originally. So I know we showed some of this before, but again, a tool that allows us to stay back, to monitor things, to monitor progress, allows us to determine evacuation if needed, allows us to do air monitoring as able, and allows us to deploy our control and containment booms effectively and monitor where that stuff's going is really what using drones and hazmat is all about. And I think that's it, Mike.
All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your contributions as well. We've got one final block, and it's going to be Craig Kroom with FLIR detection team, and he's going to talk to us about the current and next generation detection equipment for drones. Craig, you with us?
Good afternoon. I don't have any. Yeah, could you guys play one of the other videos again? Because that's much cooler than anything I've got to talk about. So, be great. And isn't it only 400 feet above an object the limit, not the sky's the limit? Just to clarify. So anyway, so yeah, thanks for inviting me, and this is just as exciting for me to hear, the stories and where drones are being used to protect people and get folks out of harm's way. And it's actually kind of one of our driving factors, really the user community coming to us. FLIR detection makes a variety of detection products, for explosives and chemical analysis and chem warfare, biological. And so this was largely in response to that, where they said, we really want to take advantage of drones to do monitoring, but we really don't have anything from a payload perspective. And so we designed a purpose-built multi-gas for a drone payload. And so that's that first slide. So it's we call it the Move C360. And currently it's built for Matrice 210, version 1, version 2. And it's an 8-channel multi-gas, pretty much standard commercial off-the-shelf sensors, but purpose-built as a payload. It uses the comms, GPS, power from the drone. And then other than that, it's a regular multi-gas. So you'll see how we display that in a bit. The other thing that you're seeing in this photo here is the snorkel. We've also incorporated a snorkel just to make sure that what the meter is sampling is out of the downdraft of the prop wash. And so, and that's proven to be pretty effective. It actually works pretty well from that perspective. So again, 8 gas, we'll go into the sensors in a little bit more detail, but basically it's a PID for volatile organics. Of course, LEL, O2, chlorine, NO2, hydrogen sulfide, carbon monoxide, and sulfur dioxide. Those are set because of weight restrictions and limitations and everything. We kind of had to set the suite, easily user changeable, but those are the sensors that are on this version. Again, powered through the airframe, 90-second cold start. So the idea is, put this on the scene quickly. Real-time standoff, again, keeping people out of harm's way is really the goal. And of course, continuous monitoring. So if you go to the next slide.
All right, we got it pulled up here, how it's controlled.
How it's controlled. So using the ViewLink application, this is, but it's in essence very similar to what the normal drone sense style view of the system. You can see that you've got the normal controls. You've got the visible camera, the XT2, platform with the visible and the infrared, and you can display those any way you want. You've got the normal drone controls, GPS, flight time, things like that. But it's automatically detecting and displaying on, we include an iPad with this software on it, and you're using the normal drone controller with this iPad connected to view what's going on the drone in real time. So you're getting real-time data, and obviously you can record it, it's logging data as well. And then the little ribbon down at the bottom there, we'll kind of dive into that in a little more detail. So that's the top view of the drone. That's what the pilot's doing, leaving both hands on the controls. So it's not a separate display. It's all on the same display. So if you go to the next slide,
okay,
that's the overall shot. And so again, in this one, we're doing, the infrared inside the visible, but obviously you can do those side by side as well. So it's very standard looking shot, so you're taking advantage of the visible, you're taking advantage of the infrared, and now you're also incorporating the sensor data from the multi-gas. And so those three pieces of information combined really kind of start to hazard could be and what's going on, where it's going. And then let's see if we drill in one more time. So that next slide.
okay,
We're seeing that the top ribbon there is has the real-time results of the sensor data. And so again, the pilot has complete visibility. Obviously, we can put a secondary controller to monitor, so that somebody other than the pilot can be looking at the data as well. But so we have the sensor ribbon displayed real time. So you have the outputs of all the different 8 sensors on there. What we found though is that if you display all 8, you end up making the viewing, the reading a little too small. So what we've actually done is we really just display the top sensors. So first off, if you don't want one, if you're not using it, is like for instance, there's no chlorine concern, you can turn that sensor off, for example. And so if you're really only worried about LEL or you're really only worried about, the PID reading, you can just have those on, or obviously you can have them all on. But what's important is, for instance, you can see on this screen, H2S is on the far right-hand side. If that was the potential chemical of concern, what happens on the software, if there is a hit for H2S, then it automatically puts it over on the left-hand side. So it'll shift anything with a hit, anything that gets up into the warning level is automatically displayed on the left. In this case, the PID reading you can see there is lit up in red and displayed on the left-hand side. We've just tried to make it simplified. We've tried to make it to where you don't have to take your eyes or hands off of the what you're looking at, or obviously looking at, spotting the drone to be able to get that information. So, yeah, so very simplified, very straightforward. We kind of see, let's see, let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay, I just clicked over to your Google Earth slide showing your readings.
Google Earth, yeah, thank you. And so I just kind of did this one for my own personal fun, really. Again, there's a log file created. So in addition to the flight log, there's a data log for all of the sensors. And so it's a simple comma delimited style text file. It's collecting a data point every, well, basically 2 times a second. And so it's a considerable amount of data over the course of a flight. And so just for fun, I know you all have access to much better GIS software than I do, but I just pulled it in. I just pulled in that file into Google Earth and plotted it out. And so what you're looking at is just a kind of a quick plot of a flight, just around the field. And so each one of those data points, I actually used the PID reading as my header. And so the header for each one of those points is actually a PID reading. And then if you click on, obviously it's not interactive here, it's just a screenshot, but if you click on any one of those points, then it expands out. There's too many data points to display every single one of them. It gets too convoluted, but in Google Earth, and I'm sure in the other software as well, you can bucket data points. And so you can have, a 5 data point average, for example. And so if you click on any one of those points, it expands out into the 5 data points. And then if you click on any one of those, it expands out into what the readings for all the sensors were, based on that. And that's just Google Earth. I mean, so an actual real GIS software, you can see how this could be really powerful to really kind of show the scene. So there's kind of 3 basic use cases that we're encountering and think are reasonable for this approach. And of course, the first one is that plume mapping, whether it's verifying what you think is going on, or what appears to be going on, what the mapping software says is going on, or whether you're just trying to determine, determine the concentrations and edges of the plume. As Chris pointed out, it's really kind of hard to blow one of these things up, but obviously you do have an LEL meter on it, so you can use that to kind of stay on the edge of the plume rather than fly into, an explosive situation. If you're finding it's not above LEL, then, mapping the different concentrations inside the plume, and certainly mapping the edges and, of course, where the plume is heading. And the nice thing about this, obviously, is you can do both vertical and a horizontal mapping, so that you get a three-dimensional idea of what's going on. Like Chris was saying, you're in situations where, or Scott was saying, you're in situations where, you could have a gas that's heavier than air or lighter than air. So it's not just enough to know, the downrange impacts. It's also good to know, the effects of how high up into the air it's getting. So we see that, obviously the plume aspects as being pretty critical. The other thing is, Scott also mentioned area array. We're finding this to be pretty useful as an interesting version of an area array, where you could actually fly the drone to wherever you're interested in monitoring, downwind or up on top of a tank, or, in a place a person or you couldn't easily reach, or you couldn't easily place an area array, land the drone, and then just monitor it real time. And as he was saying, just like as far as the camera goes, the camera will run forever on battery without the drone flying. Same kind of thing. If you land the drone, extended number of hours, just sitting in place there. So you could use it as a area monitor for an extended period of time, from an interesting location perspective. And then, of course, there is still the possibility of sneaking up on a leak or a hazardous incident, from a down position. And so we've done some pretty interesting things with that, and it works pretty well. When you're in ground effect, you do have to worry about prop wash, but beyond that, you can get some data on what's going on, even from a point perspective, as opposed to, more of a large plume. So, yeah, pretty interesting application, pretty interesting use. So next slide, if you don't mind.
Okay, I'm up the calibration station slide.
Yeah, so just quickly, again, the instrument itself is a payload-oriented piece of equipment, so it doesn't have a display screen or anything like that. So the way you talk to it when it's not on the drone is this little calibration station, and of course, the calibration station obviously performs the functions of a typical multi-gas. So you hook up your bump and cow gases to this calibration station, you hit bump or you hit cow, and it'll automatically go through all of that, display the results and store the logs and all those kinds of things. And then we also have things like training videos and all those. Those I felt as the drone. So you just chunk it into the cow station. And then at that point, you can interact with it any way you need to. So really straightforward, very much meant to be user-friendly and automated from that perspective. So, yeah, and then I guess the next slide.
Okay, delivery.
Yeah, so really this is kind of my concluding slide, and this is the first thing. And so we were curious, we've had a lot of requests, and so we put together this payload and put it on the drone, and obviously it's been well received. And so we're actually very excited and encouraged, and listening to the other guys talk today, there's such amazing opportunities here. This will be the first, this is a path forward for FLIR to work more closely with our camera folks to better integrate things. We obviously we're working with the folks at DJI. We're even working with folks at Fly Motion, and working to make this better into more integrated, more like the 300 or even UGV like Spot. And so this is the beginning, and it's very exciting, and we're happy to be part of it. That's all I got.
Very good, Craig. Thank you so much for your contributions as well. As everybody knows, and if you don't, FLIR is the world's sixth sense at adding thermal capabilities to all of the detection we've talked about here today. And all these things are just tools in the toolbox. And so wanted to thank all the sponsors for making this happen. Again, 910 Drones is the organizing entity for this series of webinars. Paul Rossi is the organizer for all of this. Again, he sends his regrets for not being able to be here today. FoxFury Lighting Solutions, Insight Fire Training, and then of course FLIR are the other three partners supporting them and hosting these. And really the most important thing to take away from all this is that regardless of these companies that are participating here and anybody that has anything in a competitive nature, we're all in this business of public safety together, and the information sharing is second to none in this arena. And so we want everybody to take away the fact that this is true open information sharing so that we can learn, make each other smarter, better, more efficient, and safer from a public safety perspective, not only for the public or the consumers or customers we're attempting to protect, but also for our own responders as well. Many of the folks on this call are responders, if not are response contractors. And so, again, we're trying to protect ourselves as well. So wanted to call that out. Let me take a look here. Presenters, you guys, looks like we got quite a bit of a chat going on here. Have you guys been able to answer some questions here?
I have
Yes, we were able to get some of them answered. Hopefully sufficiently, at least on my part.
I'll tell you what, I'm not going to have any likelihood at this moment of getting through all 45 of those. I'm just going to unmute everybody, I believe, here, and then we'll see if anybody has some questions. Let me see what I can do here. Okay, everybody should have received a request to unmute yourselves. Looks like I've got everybody unmuted, possibly, or maybe several. So if you've got a question, certainly unmute yourself and ask. But right now, I'll just open the floor up and ask: are there any questions for any of the presenters?
This must be one of those instances that we did such a great job presenting. Here's the most important thing, and I know I speak for everybody that's here. Feel free, if you don't have our contact info, to reach out to us. We're happy, any of us, if you have a question, if you're building a program, whether it's related to hazmat or UAS in general, if we don't know the answer, we probably know somebody that does. So as you move forward with your programs and things develop, always feel free to network, and speaking for myself, shoot me an email, give me a phone call, and if I don't know the answer, I'll just direct you to Wayne or Chris or Mike or someone, and they'll probably know the answer.
Scott's email is scott1445@yahoo.com, in case you wondered.
Yeah,
and I put my email in the chat.
That'll work.
I got a question. This is Zico from Homeland Security Response Team in St. Charles County, Missouri. How many drones are you guys using on any one incident? Like a fleet of 2 or 3, or are you just going with one at a time?
For a Southern Manatee, we try to get the primary one up in the air. If we're doing any kind of close quarter work, we may use a second drone to kind of as collision avoidance, maybe kind of an eye in the sky, watching the other one kind of maneuver around. Just kind of supplement the VO, the visual observer, to kind of just make sure that we don't bump into anything, get another set of eyes on it. But we do carry a couple different models, and depending on the incident, sometimes the pilots will grab a dual over the 210. Sometimes they just need a quick reference, a quick thermal, and that's the sensor we need. So a lot of times the dual might come out real quick. And then if we think it's going to be more complicated, we can set up the 210 with all the sensors.
That's a great call out, Chris, in terms of tools in the toolbox. As we talked about with cameras, the drones the same way. You've got multiple size drones and different drones for different applications. And as he said, I've heard numerous occasions where the Mavic or the Mavic 2E dual is a rapid response drone, if you will. And you can literally take it out of the bag and throw it in the air pretty fast and get rapid information back. Initial recon for your teams while your other larger drones and your workhorse drones, if you will, are getting set up. So multiple tools in the toolbox, and knowing how to deploy those is really important. So great call out.
How much you guys worked with non-DJI drones? Because being with Homeland Security, and I'm also a pilot and a tech info officer for Missouri Task Force 1, the Urban Search and Rescue Team, we can't use DJI anymore. I'm just wondering if anybody has any experience. We do have a Skydio at one of our fire departments that makes up the team, which that's been going all right, but it can't fly at night, of course. And we're kind of waiting for the X2, but just wondering if you guys had any other experience without DJI.
I'm out.
We use, and we don't want to even get into the whole data security thing. We're not, from that standpoint, I understand you're restricted. Clearly, this has been an interesting year for UAS. I know Wayne would say having competition in the market drives innovation. So you've seen that. We've added the Autel into our mix, the Evo 2 Dual with the 640 that's been real effective. And we're we're patiently waiting for Parrot to release their latest version that'll offer a 320 boson and same thing, some zoom capability in all weather. So there's been a lot of additions here to this. The Skydio you mentioned as well. Right now the Skydio, unless I'm incorrect, can't fly at night. So that's kind of a deal breaker for us since everything bad happens at night. But the X2, I believe, is again forthcoming. And the other half of that whole equation is, regardless of if you take the security things aside, having the availability of some different platforms isn't a terrible thing. The reason being, let's just say for the sake of argument, you fly a particular model and you have 2 of them. And then there's a recall or there's some issue that all of a sudden you have to ground them. And if you were solely invested in just that one airframe, that could take you out. Or if you run into geofencing issues maybe that weren't unlocked, or you run into a problem, if diverting to it, having the ability to divert to a secondary platform is helpful. So so that's, at least for Lake County, we basically DJI the Autel. We have a unique, but it's more of a training thing. We had no Skydio yet, but we're looking forward to everything that's going to be coming out as we go forward.
All right, great feedback. Anybody else have any questions?
Hello there, this is Martin. Can you hear me
Hello, sir.
okay? Yes, thank you for the nice conversation. And my background is on sensors and doing atmospheric measurements with NASA. We've done this for quite a while, 20 years. And we are working on a payload that could measure air pollution in the air so that it could be mounted on drones. I am curious about the panelists and the whole team here about what you feel is necessary in addition to the FLIR cameras and the obviously the things that we discussed today. What, in addition to all that, whether a sensor looking at air quality, air pollution type of measurements would it be useful to the community so that we understand and can fulfill the user needs?
I really don't have too much on that. For the air pollution side of it, like I said, if we could get into right now, PID meters are the next step in it. FLIR is, with the 360s, the first one really to get one of those mounted. The 300 is the only other vehicle right now that's currently that I see that's able to lift a PID meter, which gives you just volatile organic compounds on that. I've seen some stuff out of Canada where there's some technology where they're using lasers that can pretty much give you the chemical makeup of any kind of product in the air. But those are pickup truck size sensors right now. And that'd be interesting as that technology, gets down to drone size. We could probably move mountains with that kind of technology.
I think the spectral sensors have some capability with that. And again, by no means am I an engineer. The value of that, certainly in a hazmat standpoint, there's a value. The other value to that, which I think we can all speak to, is the more cross-agency capability that I show with our public safety UAS unit, the better that my funding stream is. So if I can help the health department with that, or any city, again, any government entity with mapping, a bridge inspection, or something along those lines, the county engineering office, because we have the pilots and because we have the aircraft, that expertise and partnering with them is beneficial. So a product that would address that I could pitch also reinforces my funding as far as me getting the aircraft and the people and the training that I need, because I'm not only serving public safety, but I'm also serving public works and the health department or the EMA or whatever it happens to be. So something like that developed out certainly would be beneficial, at least in my opinion, to our operations.
Great, I appreciate it. I'll follow up with an email, so we go from there. Thanks so much.
Very good. All right, maybe one more question if there is one of them out there, and we'll go ahead and close it out. Anybody else? Okay, well, again, I wanted to thank again the sponsors, thank the presenters for their invaluable contributions to this. Stay tuned for 910 Drones. They've got many more webinars on the way in this series, and you'll see invitations as an attendee. I think you'll get the invites for all the future ones as well.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
hey, Mike, it's Paul. I just wanted to pop in. I had a moment to step out. I wanted to say thank you to Wayne, Chris, Scott, and drawing a blank. And thank you to you, Mike, for being able to head this and keep this going. Apologies to our audience for having to delay this. So I also want to say thank you to everybody who did tune in and participate. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time and your attention. And thank you to all the panelists.
Very good. And not only our domestic participants, but thanks so much for the international attendees as well. I think in all of these webinars, we've had quite a few international attendees, and we really appreciate the diversity and the information sharing and the team nature of this. So thank you to everybody. And with that, we'll go ahead and close it out. Stay tuned on the website on 910 Drones for, I guess, YouTube recording. We did record this event, and so anybody can watch it and share it later as well. So thank you again, and you guys have a wonderful and safe week.
You too.
Thank you.
Mike.
Thank
Have a
you.
good week.